Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Entrepreneurs Being More for Wednesday, November 10th of 2021. I'm finding it hard to believe that we're getting close to the year being over. But Veterans Day is tomorrow, then Thanksgiving happens. And before you know it, it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and then it's January 1st and the new year starts again. So we are getting close to completing another amazing year, and 2022 is just around the corner. And I think it's going to be fantastic, but I'm optimistic. I tend to be optimistic about these things. So I don't regret that at all. I find that being optimistic actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Many of you may know that there's an important Zoom that's happening shortly after this one. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. I'll put it in now and then I'll put it in again. But our global president, Luis Kasuga, will be addressing us. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware there are some IT issues that are happening, and Luis is going to be addressing those directly. So please make sure and participate in that Zoom that's happening 58 minutes from now. We have an opportunity to be joined this evening by one of our great Royal Diamonds, also a friend. He's been a part of our Nikken community for quite some time, actually working with the corporate staff and then working with the field now, and really has had an amazing experience in this industry. Of being an entrepreneur, having a home-based businesses, involved in network marketing. And I thought it would make sense for us to work together a little bit over the next couple of weeks in getting some clarity about outcomes, about objectives, about results, and really being clear about what it is that you want from not just your life, but maybe more specifically from your Nikken business. What is it that you are looking for as your outcome? And looking at three areas that are fairly general, but I hope kind of take in a broad enough swath of what people are looking for to really cover all of the bases. So when someone would define or clarify what their end result or what it is they're looking for or what it is they're trying to create with their Nikken business, what are the concepts, the ideas that would go into that? And I've come up with three components. And if you want to add, you could add components on your own. But the three that I've come up with are income. Usually people have income objectives or outcomes that they're looking for in this category. Influence, whether it's sharing ideas or philosophy or steps with others or being part of a group that is growing and learning and helping each other. And then the idea finally of community, of creating community, whether that's something like the global wellness community, which is quite broad, or whether it's something that's more specific, a team that specifically you are working with, or a customer group specifically that you are working with. And so I asked Ben if he would help us to do two things. One, have an understanding of how he arrived at his clarity in terms of what he wanted to do or what he wants to create in these three areas. And then what are the questions? What are the questions that someone might ask themselves? How might someone get more clarity if they want that for the short term and for the long term about what they're looking at in terms of these three kind of basic objectives that have to do with what someone might be looking for in terms of a Nikken business. So Ben, welcome to the call. How are you doing this evening, Ben?
Wonderful. It's great to be with everyone, and good to see all your smiling faces. Yeah, and glad to be on and to help with these really critical questions.
So maybe we can start up at the top, and I would like to get through all three tonight if we can. We'll maybe do a follow-up session, Ben, where we talk about, okay, what are the strategies? What's the path now to make these three objectives happen? But what are your thoughts about this first area of income? Certainly, it's an important component of a business. All businesses need to have profit. They need to be generating income in order to stay afloat. And usually people will have a goal or objective connected with a home-based business or a network marketing business. How did you come about getting clarity about what this would mean for you and what you want it to mean for you in the future?
There's two aspects that kind of drove clarity for me. One is looking in the present tense, immediate need to have a certain amount of income to provide for my family. My wife has always been a stay-at-home mum, and we're a family of 10. We've got 8 children. So that puts a certain expectation and responsibility on my shoulders to provide for my family. In addition to that, by nature, I am a bit of a romantic. I want to not just put bread on the table, I want to put good bread on the table, because being the provider for my family in the way that we've built our home, I want to be able to give my family everything I possibly can, or at least have the option to. Yeah. I don't want to spoil the kids, but I want to be able to have the choice to if I have the moments arise where they deserve it. So there's been that immediate pressing need where I've always felt very keenly that responsibility to provide for my family. That's something that I've felt the weight of that on my shoulders throughout our married life. And so I think that's driven me a lot in the choices that I've made, both with my career development and then as an entrepreneur, how I approach myself, my working life as an entrepreneur to that end. If I take a step back, I think another thing that has really been influential was, I'm going to jump back in time for just a moment and just share a brief experience that I had that was a catalyst for change for me in making decisions as well. And that goes back to, gosh, I think it was 1998, maybe 1999, in the month of October. And I had just started university as studying graphic design. I was a student in England. And in the month of October was probably one of the most challenging months of my life. In that particular month, I remember my tutor came to me and said, Ben, I'm really sorry, even though you're a British citizen, you're not a British resident because you've recently come from New Zealand where you were living. You need to be in the country for at least 3 years to be a resident. That means even though you're a citizen with a British passport, British birth certificate, you're not entitled to government assistance for your studies. You can't get student loans. You can't have any assistance with your cost of living and all that kind of thing. You're completely on your own, and you've got to pay international student fees, not regular student fees. Well, I wasn't in any capacity, way, shape, or form. I didn't have the ability to do that, which meant I had to drop out of university. And so that was the first blow for the month of October. The next blow was at some point along the line, I was dating Kim. She dumped me. We finished. The relationship came to an end. Fortunately, as we can see looking forward, we got back together again, and we're now married 21 years with 8 kids. But at that point in time, we separated. And so I was devastated by that. My sister, or my stepsister, who was living in Australia, passed away in that same month, and I had no means financially to get back home to attend her funeral. And that was very hard as well. On top of all of that, my father went to jail, and I had to testify against him in court and send him there myself. And that was a very difficult time, and I had no one locally to talk to confide in, to deal with that or what have you. That was a very just so all of that happening in 1 month. I had no future for my education. My girlfriend left me. My stepsister passed away. My dad went to prison, and there I was on the other side of the world, all on my own. And I had this stupid car, the first and last time, I should say, that I bought on finance, that was anchoring me to England when I desperately wanted to go back to New Zealand. I had to stay because I needed to pay off that debt for this car that I owned. And why do I share this? It put me in a circumstance or a frame of mind that really put my back against the wall and put fire under my feet. I felt trapped. I felt desperately uncomfortable. And I was like, there is no way in heck this is going to be my future, right? I am going to do something different here. And I'm fortunate enough that I've always been of that frame of mind where I will ask in order to get, yeah? There is that principle, isn't it? Ask and you shall receive. But I would always ask for the promotion. I would always ask for the pay rise. I would always apply for jobs that I felt were out of my league, but I would go for them anyway. And that's kind of transferred into my business. So from a financial perspective, that gave me a sense of intensity behind the wanting that has driven me to take action and make decisive steps forward and really make decisions, because I didn't want to be, I moved in with my brother for a little while, and he'd been unemployed for a few years and was in this terrible trap where the unemployment benefits that he had meant that if he surrendered them and got a job, he had to earn a significant amount more in order to make a decent lifestyle change. And it was this terrible trap of, you know, they could only afford incoming calls. They could only afford enough petrol to do the weekly shop and to go to church on Sunday. There was no freedom at all. And I was just in that space when I was living with him where I was like, this is not how I want to live. And it just forced me to really take a look at my own life and go, what do I want? First of all, what have I walked into? I went over to England expecting to have this great reunion with my dad, and everything just went pear-shaped. And then I found myself stuck there. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be stuck. I'm going to turn all of this to my advantage and make something of myself. So there was a driving force there that made me make some really serious decisions about what I wanted my life to look like. And I knew in that situation, it was all down to me, no one else. I didn't have parents to back me up. I didn't have, a wealthy friend or someone that, had opportunities that they were throwing my way. It was all down to me to make it or not. And that was it. It was really, it kind of just threw a stark mirror in my face and said, if you want something to be made of your life, it's really only up to you. That's it. But I didn't want to settle. And those situations just really forced me to go, I don't want to settle. I don't want to end up in the circumstance that my brother was in. I don't want to certainly end up like my dad, right? And I'm going to make my life something great. And I'm going to turn my name, which I was presently embarrassed about because my dad had tarnished that name. I'm going to turn that into something that I'm proud of. And I did. And I if there is righteous pride, I hope there is. I feel a sense of pride now based on what I've turned my life into, as primarily a good family man that provides well for his family and puts them first. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we've got to get to that point where the status quo is unacceptable to us. Yeah, I think there are too many of us that go, I guess this is okay. Yeah, my sister made a great observation once that many of us get stuck in warm water because it's warm. Yeah, when we're in warm water, when things are okay, when every now and then a difficult life gets interrupted with moments of mediocrity, then mediocrity becomes acceptable. Yeah, and we've got to be willing to confront, that mediocrity and say, I want better. I want to do better. I want to become better. I want to have more, and really genuinely push for that. So to your point, how do we get there? How do we make that happen? I think the starting point is, it's incremental steps. A number of years ago, I worked for Amway, and one of the roles that I had was the business opportunity manager for their European region. Their European region was 26 countries and $1 billion in annual revenue. It was a big market. And one of the first things that I did to understand what that business opportunity was representing was I went to their 5 top performing markets and sat down with some of their top leaders in each of those markets to do market research, pick their brains. Yeah. And I asked all of them, what were your goals when you first joined the business? And what was interesting was they all had different reasons for starting than where they were. They said when we first got started, we just wanted to make a few hundred extra dollars. That was really what our goal was. I didn't have in my wildest dreams that I would be making the kind of money I am now. Some of them were making like $100,000 a month, and crazy figures. And but they said I didn't have that goal back then when I started, because I didn't have the experience in my life that would say I could do that. I would look at my current circumstances and my current results, and I would say, this is what I'm capable of. So to start out, their goals were realistically quite small. They'd say an extra few $100s because I believe I can do that. They wouldn't start out and say my goal is an extra $50,000 a month, because they had no evidence in their lives that would be realistic. So what happened was, it was start small and build out incrementally. Yeah. And that's really something that I've seen happen in my own life. If I would put myself 20 years ago in my newly married shoes and say, Ben, in 20 years time or 21 years time, you're not going to be a graphic designer working in a small art studio. Yeah. In that little corner over there of the office, you're going to be living in America. In $1 million home. You're going to be a best-selling author. You're going to have a business that is in multiple countries. You're going to have traveled to over 30 countries, speaking to audiences in the thousands, building a business that is reaching out and affecting communities, on a massive scale. If someone had said that, and you would have been the president of a company, you'd have, been in, trade associations, on CEO councils. First of all, my wife would have laughed. Yeah. When I got my first management job, we went out to dinner a few weeks after getting the job, and my wife said, I have to say, when you first got this, my first thoughts were, you're going to choke. You're just not an assertive person, right? And here you are being a manager. That requires assertiveness. That's not you. But I grew into the role, and from there grew into the next role, and then grew into the next role, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting. My point here is, have the big goals, but start small. Yeah. Be realistic with what I'm currently doing, but give it a stretch and push beyond that to a better place. And really commit to it. And then work like everything depends on you to get it. Because the reality is, just like me, back then in my 20s, when I was, had my back against the wall and had that stark realization of, if anything is going to happen for the good in my life, it really only comes down to me. And the truth of the matter is, for each of us, that's the same deal. If you really want to make something happen, it's going to come down to you. Our success is our responsibility, no one else's. And that includes when crises happen and when things go wrong outside of our control. It's still up to us. How we choose to respond really determines what happens next. Yeah. So like I said on my webinar on Tuesday, yesterday, it's not a matter of if something will happen. It's about when. Yeah. In business and in life, we're always going into or coming out of a crisis. We need to take responsibility to either act or react and take control. And that's up to us. So to that first question, and I've probably spoken too long on it, is if we really want to have certain financial outcomes in our lives, one, we've got to really want it. And if your wanting isn't strong enough, don't panic, start smaller. Want the first baby step, want that bad enough to take action, take ownership, be responsible for it, and then move forwards until you get it. And then, because this is what I found, you make the first $500 and then you go, great, I love that. I'm making $500 a month. I've got evidence that I can do it. What happens? As soon as you get there and you sustain it, you immediately want more. It's human nature. And that isn't a bad thing. Yeah. We're not being greedy by wanting more than $500 a month. Yeah. But the natural result is, I think I can do 1,000 now. Yeah. And then when you push for 1,000 and you get it, then you go, you know what? I'm not satisfied being here, because it's human nature based on Jeff's role to become more, to do better, to become a better version of ourselves. And that best version of ourselves isn't realized until the last day we live. Yeah. I saw an interesting statistic that some of the best results we get are in our 70s and 80s. Look at some of the top performers in the world. Yeah. Nelson Mandela. Yeah. The average age of an American president is not 35. Yeah. It's in their 60s, 70s. Yeah. That's the average age. Some of the best years, you look at Bill Gates, you look at, a lot of these great high achievers, they're in their 60s and 70s. Our best years are ahead of us or in the present. They're now. Yeah. So we've got to recognize that humans being more means we're ever growing until we die. So take full responsibility for the now and expect that your goals will change and evolve as you do, and make that happen. Next time you get a 500, aim for 1,000. Get 1,000, aim for two to three. You hit 2 to 3, aim for 5, and so on and so forth. And then before you know it, you're living your dream. Yeah.
I'm 53, so I think I've got 7 years. I got 7 years to prep and get ready for my 60s.
Yeah.
And question, so great ideas in terms of your personal story and how you've gotten there. What are some of the questions that an individual might ask themselves in order to get clear? Well, what are my needs? What are my wants? What are my possibilities for the present? So next 6 months, next year, what are some questions a new consultant or a longtime consultant might ask themselves to get clear about this income question for themselves? Because we need to at least analyze it to some level and ask some questions in order to come up with a target, with a figure that helps us make those initial steps.
Yeah. So the first question is, we've got to recognize, to begin with, just to preface the question, that we have entered an entrepreneurial space. Yeah. Being a Nikken consultant makes you an entrepreneur. It is not a job. It is not something that pays you a salary where you work a 9 to 5 and just get a set outcome. And many people that work in a job environment will admit that they have settled, or they don't know how to get out of it, right? So as you enter the entrepreneurial space, our perspective changes. And what it changes to is, what is my dream? Every entrepreneur is driven by a dream. So what is my dream? What is my aspiration? What are my hopes for what I want my life to look like? And it's not necessarily something that is in a financial term. Entrepreneurialism isn't just about making money. It's about building something. Yeah, creating something that is somewhat of a legacy. That word gets used a lot in entrepreneurialism. Yeah, but what am I making? What am I wanting to create? Because entrepreneurialism is centered in creativity, in risk taking, and in dream building. In those 3 areas: risk taking, dream building, and creativity. That's what drives great entrepreneurs. So we've got to start with that first question: what is my dream? Because this is going to be the vehicle that I'm using to make that come to life. This is the vehicle. Yeah. So the next question that I ask is, how badly do I want it? How badly do I want that dream? For me, it became necessity because I had no other alternative. I didn't want to simply just get a job. My back was against the wall. I wanted to create something great. And then when I fell in love, as the romantic that I am, I wanted to put the best bread on the table for my family I could, because I wanted my wife to be proud of me. I wanted my kids to be proud of me. I wanted to make something of myself that they would look to and go, that's my dad and that's my husband. Yeah. I wanted to have a noble, honorable, aspirational life. And that was a driving force. So what is your driving force and how badly do you really want it? The next question that I would have in succession to those is, what price am I truly willing to pay to get it? And that price isn't just in financial terms. That then comes in terms of, how much time am I going to commit? How much rejection am I going to face? Am I willing to face? How many knockdowns am I going to take and keep on getting back up? And hopefully the answer to that is, I will get up one more time than I get knocked down. Whatever that number is, if I get knocked down 1,000 times, I'll get up 1,001. Yeah, I'll always get back in the ring, because entrepreneurialism, with all of its risk taking, will bring with it rejection and knockbacks and setbacks and unexpected learning curves where you go, I wasn't expecting this to be a part of my journey. Yeah, so I've got to say, what time am I willing to invest? How much rejection am I willing to face? When I get, pessimism thrown my way, when people go, you can't do it. Yeah, how am I going to respond to that? Yeah, am I going to have the self-confidence and belief and own it myself to say, I don't care what anyone else says, I'm getting this done. Yeah, and then find the people in my community that will believe in me and back me and support me, which means, how connected am I going to be with my Nikken team? Because everyone in Nikken will always have each other's back and always say, of course you can do it, because we're all on the same journey together. Yeah. So I think that becomes really important. Those to me are the fundamental starting questions. What is my dream? How badly do I want it? What price am I willing to pay to get there? And what does that look like in terms of time, in terms of willing to face rejection, in terms of dealing with my fears, in terms of prioritizing? There was a point in my time where, for some of the goals that I worked towards, I didn't watch any television of any real sort for about 4 years, because I had to prioritize that out of my life. Yeah. I had a busy family. I had a busy, career that I was working towards, busy aspirations that I was striving to achieve. I was studying part-time at university. I was serving in my local community, in my church groups and things. And it was like, I've just got to put the less important out of my life and just say yes to the most important things. So what am I willing to say no to? What am I willing to put in the back burner in order to prioritize something here and now as more important? This is that to me is really important, because too many people will prioritize comfort. A night in front of the telly versus a night on the phone over their goals. And that's the tough part, and especially getting started. To your point, Jeff, about getting started, this is the hard part. Is typically you're working your full-time job to begin with, and in order to set up your own business and be entrepreneurial and do this on the side, it's extra hours. We talk about having time freedom, but to start with, you will have less, because you're adding to your plate versus taking away. Yeah. So you've got to keep on your full-time job and have your other commitments, but then invest in your business and commit to that. And that's what stops a lot of people from succeeding, is they're not willing to take that risk in time and make that sacrifice in order to get what they want. Because that's the bit that's tough, is really giving up our time. So that would be my key advice on that point, is make that commitment of time.
Ben, thank you. I'm just going to remind everybody of those 3 questions, because I would like us to discuss those questions next week and get people's input in terms of how they would answer them. So just to review them, they're also in the chat if you want to copy them from the chat. Ben's first question when it comes to answering this idea of income and what it might be that you're looking to earn from Nikken. What is my dream? First question. So maybe write that down and think about it. Maybe do some journaling, some writing about that this week. What's my dream? Clarity about that. How badly do I want it? Just understanding the level of desire or commitment or intention. Many of you have done the I plus M equals R game, where you go to Japan and you get clear about your intention. How badly is it that I really want it? What's my commitment level? And then final question, what price am I willing to pay to get it? Which Ben just explained to us quite clearly. What's the price I'm willing to pay to get that dream that I'm working towards? So Ben, thank you for being with us this evening. I think this was great to look at that first component of income, influence, and community, and get clarity about that first component. And we'll do it by answering these questions. So please work on this homework. Next week, we'll have a discussion and we'll talk about those three questions, what your answers might be. And hopefully from that, we can then start putting some rubber to the road and coming up with some figures. What are figures potentially short-term and long-term that you might decide in order to really get some clarity about what you want your business to produce and create as far as the financial pillar? Any final comments to share, Ben, before we close our Zoom today?
Yeah, just one point. I recognize that I took a long time answering that first question when there were a number of questions that were following. I would just say I'm happy to jump back on future calls and make this a series, so to speak, in addressing those critical questions so that we can get to that point, one of answering them and getting clarity for each other, for ourselves, on what is it that I want, what price am I willing to pay? And because within that, there is a critical question of, if my desire is lacking, because we can say my goal, my dream is this, and I'm sure we all relate to this. I would love to have X. And then you go, how badly do you want it? And you go, oh, that much. Yeah. Yeah. Because when I look at what's required, it scares me a little bit, or I question myself and my ability to get it done. And so, I shrink. And therein lies the problem. So what I'd love to jump into on a future call would be, how do I increase my desire when I recognize that it's not proportionate to my dreams? Yeah, because that's a real issue. If my desire is strong enough, I'll get it done, because it's the desire that propels the action. If I don't have that, the action is always tough. Yeah. So how do I grow my desire if my desire isn't strong enough? I'd love to jump into that, but yeah, I'd just say my commitment here in starting this call would be to continue and finish the conversation and say, let's get to some real clear action points, so that after maybe 2 or 3 calls, we can say, yeah, we've got some real clear outlines of action steps that I can take that give me confidence that I can work towards a definitive end goal that reflects my own personal dreams as an entrepreneur. That would be something that would be great. And I'd love to do that if you're willing, Jeff.
That's what we'll do. And I think it will make a really nice series for existing consultants, new consultants to access as a resource to get clear. What do I want from my business? What's the income, the influence, the community that I'm looking for? How do I create that? What questions do I ask myself? And then as a second part, what are the steps I then need to take to make that happen? So we'll continue, Ben, and we'll look forward to having you join us on future calls to help us work through that. So please, everybody, work through those 3 questions. What's my dream? How badly do I want it? What price am I willing to pay to get it? And we'll discuss that next week, and then continue on with income, influence, and community, get clarity about those 3 areas. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Royal Diamond Ben Woodward. Please remember the Zoom that's happening with our global president, Luis Kasuga, in about 25 minutes. There's a link below, and there's also links in WhatsApp and on the Facebook page to access that Zoom call. You do need to have a passcode in order to access. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you next week for Humans Being More and Entrepreneurs Being More on Tuesday and Wednesday. Have a great night, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.